Do you know what F1's rules are, how and why they've changed, and what the future holds? This is your insider's guide to F1 regulations. F1 rules are continually evolving to improve safety, improve racing, cut costs, or improve the show, and 2022 has seen the biggest changes in a long time. When the championship began in 1950, the rules were printed on 3 pages of the race program. Now, the technical and sporting regulations are in books covering hundreds of pages each. The first technical rules were simple. Cars had to have 1.5 litres supercharged or 4.5 litre naturally aspirated engines. There had to be a protection to stop flames passing from engine to driver, and they had to have 2 rear-view mirrors. Nothing that complicated then, really. Drivers had seatbelts, but crash helmets weren't even compulsory. As for races, the championship consisted of just a handful of events on tracks of any length, with races of any distance. So, how have the sporting regulations changed over the years? The format was refined after about 2 decades, with 2x2 grids, shortened tracks, and races limited to a maximum of 200 miles. But some of the biggest changes since have been to qualifying. For nearly 50 years, qualifying sessions were on Friday and Saturday, and the grid was decided by the fastest times from either. But in 1996, Friday qualifying was scrapped, and drivers were limited to 12 laps to set the best times. 7 years later, things changed radically with the introduction of single-lap qualifying. Drivers had just 1 lap on their own to set a time. But that only lasted 3 years before the modern-day knockout format was introduced. In 2021, sprint qualifying was introduced at 3 events, up to 6 for 2022. At these events, traditional qualifying is moved to Friday and decides the grid for Saturday's 100-kilometre sprint. The finishing positions of that form the grid proper. How has the points system changed? The original format saw points handed out to the top 5 finishers, with 8 for a win, 6 for second, then 4, 3 and 2. In 1961, the winning haul was increased to 9 and points were handed down to 6th place, creating a format that remained the same for 30 years. In 1991, the top prize was increased to 10, and 12 years later, the gap between first and second was reduced, with second place up to 8, and the points awarded was also expanded out to the top 8. But when the current format was introduced in 2010, it radically changed how races were scored, with 25 points for the winner, 18 for second, 15 for third, and points handed all the way down to 10th. The only changes since have come in 2019, with a point added for fastest race lap if set by a top 10 finisher, and in 2021, with the top 3 finishers in sprint qualifying getting 3, 2, and 1 points. Before we talk about the technical regulations, we want to give a shout out to our sponsor for this series, Party Poker, who currently have a special sign-up offer. If you head over to the link in the description, open a new account and deposit £10 or more today, Party Poker will match it on deposits up to £400 and give you £40 worth of free play too. Only available if you are 18 or over, T's and C's apply, and please be gamble aware and play responsibly. So, have the technical regulations evolved? The first major technical changes came in the 1960s, with safety improvements including roll bars, quick evacuation cockpits, fire protection and extinguishers. At the same time, helmets and overalls were made compulsory. In the 1970s, advances in aerodynamics, including ground effect cars, took speeds up another level. To improve safety, cars had to store fuel in a safety bladder, and drivers had to be able to get out in 5 seconds flat. The 1980s saw ground effect banned, crash testing introduced, and the concept of the survival cell developed, with the driver's feet having to sit behind the front wheel axle to reduce leg injuries. Despite these improvements, advances in engine technology had made the cars even faster, resulting in the banning of high-power turbo engines by the end of the decade. In the early 1990s, active suspension and automatic gearboxes increased speeds again, but their expense also created a gulf between the top teams and the rest of the grid, so they were banned in 1994. That year was a major turning point for the sport, as the tragic deaths of Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna at Imola led to a major new drive for safety. Immediate changes were brought in to slow cornering speeds, lowering the rear wing, raising the front wing, and adding a plank beneath the car to increase the ride height and reduce the aerodynamic effect of the floor. At the same time, the now familiar headrest protection was added around the driver and more crumple zone crash structures were brought in to increase protection from high-speed impacts in all directions. By the end of the 90s, new regulations had reduced cornering speeds even further, with engine power reduced, cars narrowed, and tyres given grooves to reduce the mechanical grip. The two most recent decades have seen further speed restrictions with new limits on rear diffusers, engine power reductions, narrower cars, the simplification of wings, and the elimination of add-on aero devices. At the same time, teams have become bigger and more innovative, so rules have had to change to eliminate loopholes. Banned innovations have included double diffusers, blown diffusers, F-ducts, shark fin-fed rear wings, flexi front wings, reactive ride, complex engine mapping, and even helium air guns. To encourage overtaking, the KERS power boost system was introduced in 2010, and then, a year later, it was replaced with the drag reduction system, DRS, that continues to this day. Rules have also been introduced to improve sustainability and reduce costs, with multi-race lifetimes for engines and gearboxes, limitations on tyre usage, and hybrid engine regulations. And the FIA's mission for safety improvements has continued too, with the HANDS head and neck safety device introduced in 2003, and most recently the Halo in 2018. So, what's next for the 2020s and beyond? The 2022 regulations are designed to improve overtaking, with the aerodynamic focus shifted from wings to underfloor tunnels, more simple front and rear wings, a ban on barge boards, and the introduction of wheel covers. The tyres have also changed dramatically, with low-profile 18-inch wheels designed to limit overheating and reduce the bulging effect on airflow around the car, which causes instability. Safety and sustainability have not stood still either, with a chassis that is longer, stronger, heavier, now 790 kilograms, and required to pass even more stringent impact tests. The fuel must also contain 10% E10 ethanol. Future engine regulations slated for 2026 are expected to increase the amount of electrical output even further, with a simplified hybrid power unit, and cars are set to run on 100% sustainable fuels, meaning F1's designers have a lot on their hands to figure out over the next few years.